Well, thanks everybody for coming. I assume everyone knows who Roger Rivera is, and this is what he looks like.
Roger!
And here he is.
Woo, thanks for coming.
And Big Black.
Wow, thank you all so much for coming. I was not expecting this big of a turnout I'm not sure how many days ago you posted it online, but thank you so much for organizing all this.
Yes. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
So I'm just curious to know a little bit more about who I'm talking about. Can I see with a show of hands, who here actually uses or used to use Bitcoin often to buy things and use it in commerce?
Yes.
I see a lot of hands up in the audience, and I'm guessing that most of you enjoy doing that. And I'm guessing by the fact that you're here tonight, you're probably a bit frustrated with the current version of Bitcoin not being very useful in commerce when it costs $5 or $10 per transaction. But luckily, there's a new version of Bitcoin that's the truest to the original version of Bitcoin called Bitcoin Cash. So everybody's heard of Bitcoin Cash here tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
And to be honest, I think we're a bit of the silent majority at this point. Just earlier, I flew in from Japan yesterday. I'm not sure if it was today or yesterday, but did they announce, was it this morning or yesterday that they announced that the SegWit 2X form?
Last night.
I have no idea what time or day it is at this point, but very recently they announced that, and I think we're going to see a big flow of capital from people who actually use Bitcoin in commerce. They're going to sell their Bitcoin SegWit 1X coins for more Bitcoin Cash, and maybe some Ethereum and maybe some of these other ones as well. But at the end of the day, if you're not able to use Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in commerce, it's not going to be a store of value. And I'm guessing by the fact that most of you are here tonight for me, I'm guessing I'm kind of preaching to the choir in that respect. So any particular topics you guys want me to address? And I promised everybody a free $1 in Bitcoin Cash. So if you don't have a Bitcoin Cash wallet already, I haven't used the Jax version. I hear that they just integrated that maybe today or yesterday. But of course, the Bitcoin.com wallet has that. And later this week, it will be default right when you first install the app. It'll be right there. So if you don't have the Bitcoin.com wallet, go ahead and install it if you want your free $1 worth of Bitcoin Cash or any Bitcoin Cash wallet for that matter. I won't discriminate, but it's then you hit the plus button and you hit create a new wallet. And you enable Bitcoin Cash, and then you can, like I've been saying since early 2011, you will then be able to send and receive any amount of money with anyone anywhere on the planet, basically for free, and there won't be anything that anybody can do to stop it. You won't have to go through a bank or government or corporation. You won't have to give your name or passport or tax ID number or anything at all, and it will work for every single person on the planet. And there will be enough room for every single person on the planet to use it. And for me, that was the vision of Bitcoin that I signed up for, and that vision is alive and well in the form of Bitcoin Cash. And put your hands up in the back if you can hear me okay. And the people in the back, okay, everybody can hear me. I'm glad I can be loud sometimes, so better to be too loud than too quiet. So I wasn't actually expecting to give a speech. Most of the hangouts or the meetups that I go to, people just hang out and talk about Bitcoin. Are there any particular topics people have or questions? Or this guy was ready right here in the front.
Yeah, I'm curious. When do you think that Bitcoin Cash will actually catch up with Bitcoin in terms of popularity and people using it?
So the fact that the question was, how soon will Bitcoin Cash catch up with Bitcoin SegWit in terms of popularity and people using it? Well, Bitcoin Cash has only been around, about 3 months now? And it's already the third biggest cryptocurrency in the entire world. That's a pretty darn amazing start. And I'm not sure. Yeah. I know certain things that I can't say publicly yet, so I apologize for that. But it's just a matter of time until we see businesses like blockchain and Coinbase and Zappo and BitPay. And I'm not saying one way or another for whether or not for sure they are going to do this, but I think it's just a matter of time until we see them offering full and complete support for Bitcoin Cash. And once that happens, that's most of the ecosystem right there, and they pull along everybody else without that.
Quick follow-up. I know you don't have a crystal ball, but if you had to make an educated guess, do you have a time frame in years or?
So the question was pick a date and pick a price where Bitcoin Cash surpasses Bitcoin SegWit. It might be as early as weeks. I would be surprised if it doesn't happen within 2018. I would be very, very surprised.
Right on.
So,
Well,
this guy looks extra.
Oh yeah, okay. I was gonna say, where's the best place to buy Bitcoin Cash in your opinion, if you don't mind?
So I can announce one thing right before you ask your question. So because it's my own company. So by the end of this month, anybody will be able to buy Bitcoin Cash with a credit card on Bitcoin.com. If you go to buy.bitcoin.com, unfortunately not today, but very, very soon, you'll be able to buy Bitcoin Cash with a credit card. Right now, you can only buy Bitcoin SegWit, and then you can use something like Shapeshift to convert it. But very soon, you'll be able to buy Bitcoin Cash directly on Bitcoin.com.
So first of all, thank you so much for being here tonight. And someone with your background, experience, intelligence, and frankly, a mix of skill and luck, you don't have to do this tonight. So thank you so much for being here. My question is, do you feel like this year you have been the recipient of any undue pressure by the part of like the federal government or any big, large banks leaning on you personally, trying to like put pressure on you to stand down from some of this proselytizing and some of this speech? Do you feel like you're like under pressure from big systems?
So I'm glad to say no, I haven't had any pressure of that sort whatsoever. I'll know when that pressure comes when I'm in jail. That means the pressure came. I guess the absolute worst thing that has happened to me is I've had some traditional bank accounts closed, but the entire point of what we're creating is that I won't need bank accounts anymore at all. So.
All right.
Yeah.
And there's a great company called Omise Go, and they have a fantastic slogan that I really like, and they're making t-shirts, and the t-shirts actually say, unbank the banked. And I think that's kind of what we're all up to here. We're making it so people won't even need bank accounts anymore.
So, Roger, thank you for coming. What percentage of your SegWit 1x holdings would you say you've converted to Bitcoin Cash at this point?
So the exact number is private, and the exact percentage is private, but I think there's a pretty decent chance that at some point in the future I won't have much of any SegWit Bitcoin left at all, to be honest. If something isn't useful in commerce, it won't be useful as a store of value either. And I think the other side of this scaling debate don't see or understand that fact. And maybe I'll tell a little bit of a story for people that haven't heard it before as to how I came to be so incredibly excited about Bitcoin so much earlier than most people. And everybody here today is excited about Bitcoin, but I was so excited about Bitcoin back in February of 2011 that I barely slept at all for an entire week and became sick and literally had to be hospitalized because of lack of sleep for being so excited about Bitcoin. But the reason I became so excited is because as a young man, I grew up in Silicon Valley and I've been playing with computers my whole life, so I have a lot of experience with computers. And just kind of by chance, maybe before freshman year in high school or between 7th and 8th grade, my mother told me no more video games, you can't use the computer, you have to do something else for the day. So I went looking on the bookshelf for a book to read because, I guess if you can't use computers or play video games, that's about the only other thing, or you get tired of riding bikes or go to bed. But I picked up a book, and it was a book called Socialism by Ludwig von Mises. Now, are there any Mises fans in the audience? Maybe at least a few, quite a few, so we can tell we're at a real Bitcoin meetup here. Yeah. And so when I picked up this book by von Mises entitled Socialism, I thought it was a pro-socialism book. And I didn't really know what socialism was. But I had this general idea that Americans were supposed to be opposed to socialism, but I thought I should at least hear both sides of the arguments because I support free speech and the free flow of ideas, unlike some other people in this Bitcoin scaling debate. But I picked up this book, and it turns out, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal referred to this book. They refer to it as Ludwig von Mises' devastating critique of socialism. And it's a book on economics, and this book basically explains how prices are so incredibly important, and prices transmit the information as to what raw resources should be used to produce what consumer goods. And without a pricing system, you have no idea if this chair should be made of aluminum and, plastic vinyl, or made of gold and leather and who knows what. And prices organize all of society so we can figure out what raw resources should be used to produce what consumer goods. And it was so incredibly interesting to me, and I started to realize that, wow, the entire world is a better off place because we have this financial system where money can transmit prices, and every time the government gets involved in the economy and they manipulate the pricing of something, they're causing resources to be misallocated and used for less efficient things. And that retards the rate of economic growth for the entire world and makes the entire world a poorer place as a result. And I found economics to be so incredibly fascinating, and I read one economics book after another, and it really, really, really was fascinating to me. And one of the other things that was in this book was about the origin of money. Most people, they never taught me in school where money comes from and how did the dollar get to become used as money, and how did anything become used as money. And the theories in these books were basically that something that initially is a commodity comes to be used as money. But not just any commodity, it has to have certain properties and characteristics. And those properties are that it's easily recognizable, easily storable, easily divisible, easily transportable, and maybe one or two others that are slipping my mind at the moment without my list of those things. And I read about these theories in the book, and they made sense. I was pretty convinced. And then for those that don't know, but without going on another big tangent, I've already done some time in federal prison. And I got to see inside the federal prison, there's an entire prison economy in which people are buying and selling and doing services for each other. And naturally, people start using things as money. And lo and behold, the things that they started using as money in the prison were commodities that have the same characteristics that were given in these economics books. So mainly tobacco, postage stamps, and top ramen soups. And if you think about it, tobacco, postage stamps, and top ramen soups, they're easily recognizable, they're durable, they're easily transportable. They have all these characteristics that make them useful as money. So then when I heard about Bitcoin for the first time, I had enough of a computer science background to understand that it couldn't be shut down or controlled or stopped by governments. And I realized that it had all the characteristics that made it useful as money. So I knew, both from the theories I read about in the economics books and from the empirical evidence I had from watching this microeconomy inside of prison right before my eyes, I knew people were going to start using Bitcoin as money. There was no doubt in my mind whatsoever. So the first step was to go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoins. And the next step was to go out there and start investing in businesses to make Bitcoin more useful for people and to tell people about Bitcoin, and apparently to go to Bitcoin meetups all over the world and tell people about Bitcoin for the next 7 years of my life. Because this truly is one of the most important inventions in the entire history of humankind, right up there on par with the importance of the invention of the wheel or electricity or the transistor or the internet itself. That's how big of a world-changing invention this is, because it empowers every single human being on the planet to engage in commerce with every other human being on the planet without having to get permission. And if you respect individual rights and individual human freedom, that's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah.
I need some water. Do we
Yeah.
some water? Excuse me one second.
I'll take a minute to explain how I got into Bitcoin. 1996. No, actually, I had started a web hosting company in 1996, and we started getting all these signups the first month. And I was all excited. I was like, well, this is taking off like crazy. We're not even doing anything. And then 2 weeks later, chargebacks. It was all stolen credit cards from Vietnam, and everything. And so we lost all the money we thought we had, plus $35 per chargeback. I didn't even know what chargebacks were before this. And we almost lost our ability to take merchant accounts. So I was talking to my co-founder, like, what should we do if we lose our merchant account? Like, take checks in the mail? And I was like, even those could bounce. I was like, take cash in the mail. Basically, I was like, if we lose our ability to take credit cards, like the only thing we do really is like check $100 bills in the mail. And I was like, I wish there were a way, this was even pre-PayPal, to like email cash, like attach a PDF and $100 to an email. And I was that close to inventing PayPal, but I didn't quite, I wanted to be I was like a protocol, like email, where you could transfer money. And my friend was like super computer science guy, and he's like, I don't know. Yeah. so basically I came up, I was like, well, maybe you should be able to go to like treasury.gov, put in your social security number, and then they'll just keep track of your money or something like that. Like at least the government should do that instead of printing more cash. Then 2010, June, I read about Bitcoin on Slashdot, and I said, wait a second, did someone figure out that thing from 13 years ago? Or 14 years ago I was trying to figure out? And I looked into it, and computer science, and I was like, I think they did. And I was like, what did they do? And how do they stop someone from, like, because I was like, also you've always be able to email that. I emailed you $100, I emailed you $100, so double spend problem, and I couldn't really figure it out. So I was like, how do they deal with this double spend problem? And it was just, everyone keeps a copy of every transaction ever, and that way you can check. And I was like, that wouldn't have worked in 96, but 2010, I was like, yeah, what is it, 200 bytes, to keep a transaction? I'm like, yeah, hard drives are so cheap. To me, that is what made Bitcoin possible. So I'm a big blocker because it is insane to me that because so many people are just like, I can't believe this. Like, how, this won't work. I was like, yeah, it wouldn't work in '96. It worked in 2009. It definitely works in 2017. It's just gonna work better and better, and that's the whole like point of Bitcoin to me. Not the point, but that's what enabled Bitcoin. So anyway, big blocks.
Yeah, that's a fantastic story. Thank you for sharing that.
We had a question over here.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a quick question about mining. I just hear people a lot of talking about mining and the rate changing. Is that something we should worry about?
Oh, the hard work for them.
So I think you're asking about the emergency difficulty adjustment on Bitcoin Cash, and at the end of the day, if Bitcoin Cash becomes the predominant version of Bitcoin, the emergency difficulty adjustment things will never even activate at all because it'll always have the majority amount of hash rate.
I got the
So-
cheap chairs.
Hopefully everyone's okay in the back. I'm not worried about it. It's a very, very, very minor annoyance at the moment, but obviously Bitcoin Cash is working just fine. And for those that don't know, Bitcoin SegWit 1 megabyte has this thing called replace by fee, in which, and the average confirmation time now on Bitcoin SegWit 1 megabyte is about 2 hours. So at any point within that 2-hour window, you can rebroadcast the transaction and spend your coins to somebody else, which makes it incredibly inconvenient for commerce. Whereas Bitcoin Cash doesn't have that. And once you see your transaction broadcasted to the network, you're pretty much good to go at that point. So in regards to your question, it's not really anything I lose any sleep about at all. So.
Yeah, piggybacking on that question, like, what about the inflation that basically happened because of the difficulty changing and all the miners hopping on? And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that.
So the inflation that happens when the EDA kicks off and everybody's mining a block a minute.
Correct.
If you look at it in the grand scheme of things, it's like 0.00001% extra inflation. I'd have to do the exact math, but it's far, far, far less than the dollar or anything else, and it's way less than 1%. So it's not really something. It's a minor annoyance, but not any sort of major problem.
Here another question. First of all, thank you for being here. I think we're all very honored to have you here amongst us. I mean, it's I've watched you a lot on YouTube, and to see you in flesh is, I mean, that's very special. So thanks for being here. But I have some questions about Bitcoin Cash in terms of the roadmap, and especially fungibility, which is a problem with Bitcoin, and also whether there's going to be a Lightning Network on Cash or not, because it does have some advantages of keeping the blockchain fairly small, so that people can have a full node. Like I have my own full node, and it's nice if it doesn't take like petabytes of data. So if you could speak about that, that would be great.
Yeah, so there were a couple of questions wrapped up in there. The first one was about fungibility. Unfortunately, due to the scaling debate for the last couple of years, fungibility has taken a back seat in the public discussion. And if there's one other weak part about Bitcoin at the moment, it's the fungibility, and that really needs to be improved, because that's one of the characteristics that make money, is every piece of money has to be the same as every other piece of money. I think someone's having some feedback there with the microphone, but that's really important and needs to be addressed. But one thing that's worth pointing out is for these companies that are doing the blockchain analytics and all that sort of stuff, if you have to sift through 1 megabyte worth of data every 10 minutes, that's much easier than sifting through 8 megabytes or 80 megabytes or even in the future 800 megabytes of data every 10 minutes. The bigger the haystack, the harder it is to find the needle that they're looking for in there. So bigger blocks actually help improve fungibility. And another downside too with these high fees, all the Bitcoin mixing services, which add fungibility to Bitcoin, have been priced out of existence. Nobody wants to pay hundreds of dollars to mix their coins around and make them fungible again. Whereas on Bitcoin Cash, you can do all those things again. So that's another advantage that Bitcoin Cash has over SegWit 1 megabyte Bitcoin. In regards to Lightning Network and Layer 2 stuff, Bitcoin Cash supports all of that as well, and it'll do it better than Bitcoin. Bitcoin SegWit. I'm still not quite sure what to call the SegWit 1 megabyte chain. At some point, maybe it'll just plain die, and I won't have to refer to it at all anymore. But to be honest, I wish them the best. I hope they have success. I wish they would do the same for us, though. For some reason, they don't seem to feel the same way about any other coin. Vitalik Buterin, the creator of Ethereum, had an interesting comment on Twitter the other day. He said only the small blockers are wishing him ill will and that he would go to jail. None of the big blockers ever say those sorts of things to him. So I think it's important for all of us on whatever side of the scaling debate you are. Wish everybody success in life. Wish everybody success with their cryptocurrencies. Yeah. Wish everybody success with anything that they're doing, so long as it's not using force or fraud against any other human beings.
Hey, Roger, big fan. I have two questions. One, my buddy Ryan X Charles says that we need 10 gigabyte blocks in order for Bitcoin Cash to kind of scale on a global, or have mass adoption on a global scale. And so, like, what's your plan, like, roadmap to kind of scaling to that big of a block size?
So the first company that I really started that took off was a company called Memory Dealers. And one of the first products that we were selling, funny enough, was memory. And the product was an 8 megabyte, not gigabyte, not terabyte, not petabyte, an 8 megabyte cache module. And we started out selling them for like $750 each.
Wow.
And then the next year we were selling them for around $500 or $400 each. And the year after that they were maybe $200 each. And the last batch of those same 8 megabyte cache modules I bought for 20 cents each. And I thought for sure I was going to be able to sell them for 35 cents each. But instead they've sat in my warehouse. And I bought like 50,000 of them or something like that. Instead they've sat in my warehouse to this very day. And I haven't brought myself to throwing them away. But I have boxes and boxes of these things. And to be honest, today, the cardboard boxes that they come in are probably worth more for recycling value than the cache modules themselves. And so today, 8 terabyte blocks, or I forget the exact number that Ryan gave, 10 gigabyte blocks. That sounds, wild and crazy, and how could we ever have that? But today we laugh at 8 megabyte cache modules that were $800 each. In the future, it won't be any problem at all. And time flies. And so does the...
I got a second question.
If you stay behind the speaker, you won't get that feedback most likely.
We'll give it a try. So, any other questions? I think there are lots of hands there. We're breaking everything. Hey.
You had it.
This is awesome.
It's okay.
Roger, if how would you address somebody who would say that Bitcoin Cash would be moving into a centralized direction because it's owned by you and maybe some other miner or something like that? Because I don't think that's true. But why is it that someone might think that?
So to repeat the question for those that couldn't hear back there, what do I have to say to people that claim that Bitcoin Cash is centralized and owned by me and a couple of miners? That's nonsense. I don't own Bitcoin Cash any more than anybody else. It's not controllable. I don't know of a single person that's ever had a Bitcoin Cash transaction censored. I think one of the other big disagreements in the scaling debate that people have is the small block side of this. They seem to think that every single person should be running a full node. But and they think that the more full nodes the bigger the percentage of people running full nodes, the more censorship resistant Bitcoin is. But I don't think that's the case. I think it's just the absolute number of full nodes around the world that help. And the goal isn't decentralization. I hear people say decentralization this and decentralization that. Decentralization's a nice tool. The goal is censorship resistance. And decentralization is simply the tool that we use to achieve censorship resistance.
Let's see it.
Try the other mic.
Can people hear me okay without the microphone in the back?
Yeah.
Good.
Nice.
Probably a lot better for all of us.
Yes.
Sure. And speak loud so everybody can hear.
So you said wish luck to everyone who's not trying to commit fraud. So
Force or fraud.
Force or fraud. So let's stick with fraud. So you publicly stated that you will only sell Bitcoin Cash on Bitcoin.com. So for say
I didn't say that.
Oh, okay. So for
I don't think it was intentional, but that could be construed as fraud.
Okay.
For you to say that.
So
I don't think it was intentional.
let's say my mom goes to Bitcoin.com and she buys Bitcoin Cash. Would you consider that fraud if she really wanted Bitcoin and she went to Bitcoin.com to buy it?
So we have all the information out there. We explain exactly what it is. So all the information's there. So if someone goes and buys a can of Coca-Cola and somebody told them that it was Bitcoin because they didn't do enough research to tell the difference between a can of Coca-Cola and Bitcoin. I think that they should do a bit more research, and I think it's up to us to tell people what it is clearly. And we have an entire long article explaining the difference between Bitcoin SegWit and Bitcoin Cash on Bitcoin.com, and it goes through all the details. And if you read the Satoshi white paper, there's maybe, 7 or 8 characteristics of what makes Bitcoin Bitcoin. And arguably, Bitcoin Cash has more of those characteristics today than Bitcoin SegWit does. So it's
So
definitely
you'll
debatable.
continue to sell Bitcoin on Bitcoin.com.
At some point, we'll probably discontinue Bitcoin SegWit 1x stuff on Bitcoin.com. At the moment, all of our new stuff is being built. All of our resources are being devoted to Bitcoin Cash at the moment.
Do you own BitcoinCash.com?
I do not own BitcoinCash.com.
Oh man. That might be a good idea to sell Bitcoin.
Can I sell it to you?
Any other questions? So.
First
And
of all,
maybe so people feel fair too. Maybe like if you don't mind, we can just have people line up right here, and then that way there'll be a line for questions, so people don't feel like I'm not picking on them or calling on them. And then if we run out of a line, then we'll. If you don't want to wait in line, just keep your hand up, and when the line runs out, then we'll call you. And you can be second in line. I see you very, very eager right there.
First of all, thank you for coming. You know, I know you don't have to be here, and I respect you so much.
And I'll repeat the
All the
question
work
for
you do.
people in the back that can't hear. So.
You know, back in the day, we all sent Bitcoin because it was fun, you know, and then we started to transact with it. But as it became more valuable, you know, people started to hoard it, and now it's become a store of value, okay? So, of course, the world needs some type of currency so that we could transact with it and get things done with it. But one thing I was thinking, now that, you know, with Bitcoin, high transaction fees, and the fact that I don't think they're going to do anything with the code anytime soon, that's just going to be a store of value. Now, with Bitcoin Cash, when the 99% of the population starts to acquire it, will it end up following the same path as Bitcoin, where it starts to go up in value, and then people stop spending it, you know? And then now it becomes a duplicate of Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on that? What are your plans to keep that from happening?
So it was a little bit of a long question. I'm hoping my voice will last all night, so I'm not going to repeat the whole question, but I'll elaborate a bit on that topic, hopefully loud enough for everybody to hear. So actually, maybe I will repeat the question. Basically, he's saying, well, Bitcoin started out, people were using it in commerce, and then now it's become a store of value. But that's exactly how things become a store of value, is if they have some other use case first, then they can become a store of value. And so it was the fact that Bitcoin initially was used in commerce that enabled people to use it as a store of value today. The reason houses can be viewed as a store of value is because they have another use case. You can live in them, right? The reason the dollar is a store of value is because it has another use case. You can spend it everywhere. The reason gold is a store of value is because it has another use case. You can make electronics or jewelry out of it. And so the only reason Bitcoin came to be used as a store of value at all was because it was used in commerce first. And if the use case in commerce disappears, the use case of a store of value is going to disappear along with it. And so with Bitcoin Cash, we have people just now starting to use it in commerce. But as the use of Bitcoin Cash in commerce grows, the ability to use Bitcoin Cash as a store of value will also grow. And as the use of Bitcoin SegWit 1x in commerce declines, the ability to use it as a store of value will also decline. And so that's what I see happening in the future with that. So.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
My question is, since China's touch regulation seems to be pulling back, Japan seems to be stepping forward and adopting. Can you speak a little bit more about what's going on globally and in Asia and to adopt cryptocurrencies, from your perspective here and in Japan?
Sure. So the question was, China's pushing back on Bitcoin, Japan's embracing Bitcoin. Talk about what's happening in Bitcoin in the entire world, and
30 seconds or less.
Everybody loves to think that I know absolutely everything that's going on about Bitcoin all the time. And as much as I would love for that to be the case, and I remember in the early days in 2011, I could literally read every single post on the Bitcoin forum that was happening there. and maybe once every 2 weeks there would be one little mention about Bitcoin in a newspaper or somewhere, and everybody would be so excited. Oh my God, they said the word Bitcoin. And today, as all of you know, it's absolutely impossible to keep up with even 1% of what's going on. There's so many things happening with Bitcoin and ICOs and Ethereum and regulations this and exchanges that, and unfortunately hacking's here and thefts there as well, but wonderful things happening all over the world as well. And in Japan, I can tell you, I've been living in Japan as home base for about 12 years now. I can tell you a bit of the reason why Japan is embracing Bitcoin so much, though. That I can speak to. And so I had the fortune or misfortune of meeting with a couple of politicians in Japan over the last couple of years about Bitcoin. And they were so excited about Bitcoin. And I'm excited about Bitcoin too, but for very different reasons than these politicians. The reason these politicians were so excited about Bitcoin in Japan, and some of you may not know this, but Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto. Very, very clearly a Japanese person. And I kid you not, these politicians wanted to make sure that the entire world knows about what a wonderful thing was created by this Japanese Satoshi Nakamoto. So they wanted to do their best to spread Bitcoin to the entire world, so that the entire world can appreciate Japan for having created Bitcoin for us. And I sat there with my lips sealed and said, "Oh, thank you so much for helping." And another funny story on the Japan note. Also, I think in maybe 2011 or 2012, I think it was UFJ Mitsubishi Ginko, which is one of the biggest banks in Japan. They sent an email to the Bitcoin Foundation wanting to speak with Satoshi Nakamoto about Bitcoin because they understand he's Japanese and they figured he could explain it all in Japanese for them. At the time, instead, they got referred to myself and actually Mark Karpelis as well. Thank you. So, next question, please.
So, as I understand it, Bitcoin Cash has 8 megabyte blocks today. So my question is, like, let's say that's not enough in a few years. How do you increase that without creating the same contention that Bitcoin SegWit is going through right now?
So when I first got involved in Bitcoin, my strategy to spread Bitcoin was to get as many people around the world using it as quickly as possible for everything from big giant expenses to things like coffee and baby diapers and groceries and take your pick. And if everybody's using it for everything, then politicians would not be able to demonize it and ban it and say that this is only for bad people, because no, people are using it to buy baby food and coffee with it. Of course it's for everybody. And never, ever, ever in my wildest dreams did I imagine a group of people would manage to wrestle control of Bitcoin and shun people who actually want to use Bitcoin in commerce and choke Bitcoin so that people can't use it in commerce. That was inconceivable to me. So I definitely didn't see that coming. My biggest fear was outside attack vectors from government rather than inside developers who don't want people to use Bitcoin in commerce. So how do we prevent the same thing from happening with Bitcoin Cash? I think it's pretty darn clear at this point, although to be fair, it was pretty darn clear in the early days of Bitcoin that if the blocks ever became full, the block size would be increased. That's been Bitcoin Cash's calling card from day one. I would be stunned, absolutely, even more stunned than I was when it happened to Bitcoin.
Bitcoin Cash 2X.
I would be 16X. I would be stunned if it happened, and at the very least, we have a couple of years before we have to worry about that problem. And for anybody who's not familiar, there's another thing called Metcalfe's Law, which I believe they say the value of the network is, increases by the square of the participants or something to that effect. So that means Bitcoin Cash, even if they limit it to 8 megabyte blocks, and we can still build all the layer 2 stuff on top of Bitcoin Cash that the other people were planning to build on Bitcoin SegWit 1X, and it'll work even better on Bitcoin Cash. That network's going to be a heck of a lot more valuable than Bitcoin SegWit 1X at that point. So I hope it doesn't become a problem. I didn't think it was going to be a problem the first time around. I kind of feel like lightning struck the first time around that these people managed to wrestle control of it. I don't think it'll happen again, but we're going to find out one way or another, I guess, is all I can say to that front. So thank you for your question. So.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming. So I have a Bitcoin 101 question. I was chirping about how excited I was and saying, well, Bitcoin's great because it can only expand to a certain number of Bitcoins, and it's not controlled by some small oligarchy like the central banks can increase the number of Bitcoins. And then someone asked me, a friend asked me, well, what actually prevents that from happening? And so could you explain what would keep the core developers, whoever, from going haywire, either in terms of checks and balances or actually for any crypto or Bitcoin, creating more Bitcoins than they're supposed to? Because like that seems like that's the one hole in the dike or whatever. I'm not sure how that would work.
Sure. So at the moment you have this worldwide ledger that's keeping track of who has how many Bitcoins and where they are, and all that ledger has to agree with everybody else. And if your version of the ledger says, okay, you have extra Bitcoins, all the other nodes are going to say no, all the miners are going to say no. So there's a technical reason and there's a social contract there. And like everybody has said, like, no, this is hard capped to 21 million. So it's both on the technical side and on the social side to prevent that. And I think that's one of the most rock solid things about Bitcoin at this point. So.
But the code could be changed, right? That's what I was trying to explain, how it could never happen, but it could happen.
The code could be changed to drop things down to 1 kilobyte blocks, but I don't think anybody's ever going to do that either. So anything is possible.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. And did you get a sticker? Everybody that comes up gets a sticker as well. If anybody wants a Bitcoin.com sticker, I brought a bunch of Bitcoin.com stickers. So. There you go. Very nice to meet you.
Thank you, Roger, for being here. Thank you, everybody else.
All right.
Awesome. I too was excited to see stuff on the news. I don't know if you guys remember when the guy had the Bitcoin sign behind Yellen, but that was a big moment for me. My question is actually about centralization. I know it's a hot word. And it's specifically regarding the infrastructure, specifically like the internet network itself and the wires and pipes it runs through. And do you think that's a concern? And do you think mesh networks play into that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so we've already built uncensorable money thanks to the invention of Bitcoin. So the next step is to build an uncensorable internet, where people and governments and people, wearing fancy suits with flags out in front that claim to rule the rest of us don't have the ability to turn off our internet. So that's the next step. And luckily now there's lots of coin millionaires that have lots of money that can help fund projects like that. And thanks to Moore's Law, the hardware that's required to build mesh networks and uncensorable internets get cheaper and cheaper year after year. So I think it won't be too long until we have things like that. So of course I'm a fan of uncensorable money and uncensorable internet connections. I like both those things. So thank you.
Awesome. My second question.
Sorry you got kind of bumped to the end of the line.
No worries. So could you explain the fork to someone that's not that savvy, and what are your thoughts on it?
So the question is, can I explain the fork? So I guess the first question should be which fork?
Well, I use Coinbase, and I get all these alerts about the fork. And so I guess I was just curious of what, how does that affect, or what would the fork be in just like 101?
Okay.
And what are your thoughts on that?
So I guess I should back up one step. So this young lady says she's using Coinbase.
Boo.
Coinbase. I would like to say Coinbase is a wonderful company.
Roger,
Don't
you
use
gotta
them.
get Bitcoin Cash on Coinbase,
No good.
please.
Just a moment.
I'm a starter buying it.
No problem. And that's exactly right. So Coinbase is a wonderful company that's helped all sorts of people get started with Bitcoin. And it's a fantastically easy way to buy Bitcoin and soon Bitcoin Cash.
Yay!
But it's important to realize that Coinbase is not a Bitcoin wallet. Coinbase is a Bitcoin bank. And you're trusting Coinbase to hold your Bitcoins for you, just like you're trusting Bank of America to hold your dollars for you. But one of the most important points about Bitcoin is that you don't need to trust anybody to hold it for you, and you can hold it yourself. And I'm only slightly biased, but the Bitcoin.com wallet is a fantastic wallet in which you can hold your Bitcoins yourself, in a wallet in which you have 100% complete control. Coinbase can't freeze your Bitcoin.com wallet. The IRS can't freeze your Bitcoin.com wallet. The US government can't freeze your Bitcoin.com wallet. The Chinese miners can't freeze your Bitcoin.com wallet. nobody can freeze your Bitcoin.com wallet. So I want to implore all of you, whether you're an experienced user or a newbie to Bitcoin, make sure that you're using a Bitcoin wallet rather than a Bitcoin bank, because it would be a horrible, horrible feeling to wake up one day and have your Bitcoin bank having frozen all your Bitcoins. That would be horrible. Yeah. And most people think, well, Coinbase is never going to freeze my Bitcoins. But I'm sure the people in Cyprus never thought that the banks would freeze all of their money and take a third of it as well. So keep your Bitcoins in a real Bitcoin wallet. And we have all the information up on Bitcoin.com that explains all the difference between various Bitcoin banks like Coinbase and Zappo and a number of others, which are great companies that make it easy to buy and sell Bitcoin. But don't use them as a way to store your Bitcoin. Hold your Bitcoins in a true Bitcoin wallet. And if you can't remember where to get one, Bitcoin.com.
So, just to go back to that.
I'm sorry I didn't answer your question about the fork at all.
I just like haven't done anything, and I just keep getting alerts about it and the fork, and I like to know more about that.
So to answer the actual question about the fork, the advice is the same. Keep your Bitcoins in a Bitcoin wallet, not in a Bitcoin bank. So Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash forked off on August 1st.
Yeah.
If you had been holding your Bitcoin in a Bitcoin wallet, you would have access to both of them right now today. Because you were holding your Bitcoin in a Bitcoin bank, you're at the bank's mercy to get access to your Bitcoin Cash. And they're claiming and promising that eventually you'll get access to it, but here we are a couple of months later, and you still don't have access to your Bitcoin Cash. Right. And I'm sure one day they'll do it soon, but that's an exact example as to why you should hold your Bitcoin in a Bitcoin wallet, not a Bitcoin bank. So any fork that's coming up in the future, hold your Bitcoin in a Bitcoin wallet, not a Bitcoin bank, because then you'll be in control of your Bitcoins yourself. So pretty much for any answer or any question, almost always the answer is to hold your Bitcoin in a Bitcoin wallet, not a Bitcoin bank.
Okay.
They're completely separate. Once it forks, so you can use your Bitcoin Cash separately.
They claim to have doubled it. So basically, if I had $100, it would be duplicated. They claim.
It's like it had it's like you had $100 bill in your wallet and it had a little $5 baby. And it happened at the bank, and the bank said, "What?
I guess it just it really
We'll give it to
confused me.
way later.
Yeah. We have all these $5 bills now running around."
That's way different.
I'd love to see Coinbase get this.
So there is no more fork.
There's no more that you need to worry about at the moment.
Sorry. Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you. How about a sticker there? Oh, you got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your Roger. I just had a question about the, obviously it's Bitcoin Cash. I had a question about the Segwit 2X thing. And obviously that was a huge flop. And the thing that was curious to me was a few people were able to destroy millions, billions of dollars in a matter of 24 hours for the future project. And my question is that what assurances can Bitcoin Cash give that kind of system since they've branched off from Bitcoin?
So I'm sorry, what assurances can Bitcoin Cash give to who or what?
For instance, the predictability itself that has with SegWit, with Bitcoin SegWit. What kind of assurances can Bitcoin Cash give to consumers to know that predictability maintains?
So the question is, what can we do about predictability? Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, Zcash, Monero, take your pick. They're all pretty risky at this point. They're all still really new. Don't invest more money than you can afford to lose, but definitely invest something. And this is fundamentally world-changing technology. It's not guaranteed to be Bitcoin Cash. It's not guaranteed to be Ethereum or Dash or take your pick. There's 1,001 cryptocurrencies. But I think it is guaranteed to be some cryptocurrency. And the days of government-issued pieces of paper being used as money all over the world are coming to an end right before our eyes.
If I could just ask one more question, is there any updates on the crypto country?
Yeah, so the question is, what about freesociety.com as a project? Like for those that don't know what that is, so we've already raised more than $100 million in capital, and we were The lawyers told me very, very carefully to not use the word ICO. So we are not having an ICO.
Yeah.
What does ICO mean?
But we're looking for a way to allow the public to participate, and there will probably be some sort of tokens involved. And the idea is to raise, since most early Bitcoin adopters and cryptocurrency adopters are pretty strong, ardent libertarians, the idea is to go and put together a bunch of money and buy a piece of land from an existing government, but not just buy the land, have that government grant sovereignty with that land. So it would in effect be its own country, but in reality we'll make it the world's very first non-country.
Wow.
Where we'll set up the initial constitution and the laws of the land, which will basically be don't use force or fraud against your fellow human being. Thank you. And then we'll see what happens from there. And it'll, if Hong Kong or in places like that are any example, this is very quickly is going to become one of the most prosperous places on earth, and it can become an example for the rest of the planet too of how to look at how much better things are when you don't have a monopoly. Everybody's taught in school from a young age that monopolies are bad, right? Everybody heard monopolies are bad.
Sure.
So why do we have a monopoly on government within a specific geographic area? Why do we need that monopoly is good? The monopoly to protect us from monopolies? Like that's nonsense. So anyhow, if you stop and think about it for a minute, the whole thing is a bit crazy. So anyhow, we're going to see what happens without a monopoly on government. And the update on that is we're working with the lawyers to have a way for the public to participate. And hopefully we'll have the actual land place announced by this time next year is the hope. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Where's it located?
We will hope to announce that by this time next year. Did you get a sticker already? Thank you for coming tonight. So I'm Roger. Nice to meet you.
All right. So my question is a bit more macro on crypto. You've seen that Wall Street is about to get involved in what's happening in the crypto space. What do you see crypto in another year with Wall Street being involved in the futures market, and where do you see it going forward with kind of that influx of capital and regulations and the like? And are you having conversations with anyone in the institutional investor space, and what are they saying?
So I get contacted pretty much every single day by traditional investment people and banks and hedge funds and this and that. Like, Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are not slowing down. And if it seems like things are getting busier and busier every day, this is still just the beginning, right? This is still just the very, 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 very early days. It's not going to slow down. It's going to get bigger and bigger, and more adoption, and more of this is going to happen. Because once you realize and you've used a money in which you have complete control over it and it works in every country, you don't need permission, that's incredibly liberating, incredibly powerful, and the value of your money goes up over time rather than down.
Yay.
Yeah.
Right? Who doesn't like that as well?
I doesn't like that.
So it's only going to speed up. There's going to be more adoption from Wall Street. There's going to be more adoption from Main Street. There's going to be more adoption from every country in the entire world. And we're going to see a massive inflow of capital that's even bigger than what we've seen already. $7,000 per Bitcoin and $700 per Bitcoin Cash, like that may seem like a lot compared to a year or two ago. It's still just getting started. And remember, it's a moving scale, right? The dollar, I'm not that old, but when I was a kid, I remember you could still buy candy at 7-Eleven for 3 cents, right? I don't think they sell anything for less than 30 cents or 50 cents at this point. And that's not because candy became more expensive to produce. It's because the government printed more dollars and the dollars are worth less. So it's a sliding scale on both sides. Bitcoin becomes more useful and therefore more valuable, but the dollar becomes less scarce and therefore less valuable. So it's a sliding scale on both sides. So we're just, long story short, we're just getting started.
We're in your conversation with Wall Street or institutional investors, what are they saying about Bitcoin? What are they saying about cryptocurrencies? Where are their heads at in regards to?
Most of them are asking for advice on how to keep it safe, which if they're asking that sort of thing, that means that they're wanting to buy some, which is a good sign for all of us that already have some. So,
Right.
anyhow, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. A couple stickers there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
So I'm pretty new to the crypto space in general, and I've been, watching and reading everything I can. And I found you recently, and then whenever you come up on Twitter or YouTube, there's always a bunch of comments saying, "Oh, he's a shill, he's a pump and dump," just like very negative, usually not substantive. ad hominem attacks. And I was wondering what you thought that was. Is that some like bottom-up organic thing from Bitcoin maximalists, or is it like more top-down controlled? It just feels very inauthentic, and I don't know, like, I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, so the short answer is I don't actually know how authentic it is or not. I know that they've accused me of paying for social media astroturfing. I've never ever done anything of the sort ever. And so I wonder if it's a bit of a guilty conscience on their part to accuse me of doing the very thing that it appears that they're doing, because I've noticed the exact same thing. Most of these accounts don't have real pictures of real people, and the comments are always like, "You suck, you're stupid, Bcash, ha ha ha." But I think if anybody spends a moment and thinks about it for a minute, you have two versions of Bitcoin. One in which the transaction fees are incredibly high, the confirmation times are indeterminate and therefore unreliable, and the double spin risk is very high. And you have another version of Bitcoin in which the fees are less than a penny, the transactions are always included in the very next block, and you don't have to worry about double spinning. So you have one that's fast, cheap, and easy, and reliable, and the other that's slow, expensive, and unreliable. And I'm saying the fast, cheap, and easy, and reliable one is the one that people are going to use, and these people are calling me stupid and dumb and ha-ha, Bcash. Spend a moment and think for yourself, which one of those two versions of Bitcoin is the one that's going to be more useful? And there's no doubt in my mind at all. And I remember in the earliest days of Bitcoin too, when I was telling people, look at Bitcoin, this is going to change everything. There are lots of people that said, why would you buy stupid magic internet money? That's dumb, you're throwing your money away. I'm pretty glad I didn't listen to the haters at that point. And I'm glad I'm not listening to the haters at this point. I use my own mind and I look at the evidence and I see this makes sense. And if this makes sense to me, I'm going to say it. Whether or not a bunch of people on Twitter follow me, and there was even one guy on the meetup group saying, Bcash, you sucks, it's a fraud. And like, if you don't like Bitcoin Cash, don't use it. If you don't like Bitcoin, don't use it. If you don't like cryptocurrencies, don't use them. But I think more of us here, maybe we don't like the dollar and the euro and the yen, so thanks to Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, we won't have to use those currencies anymore. So that's a lot more exciting to me. So,
Thank you.
anyhow, thank you.
Totally.
I actually got one already.
Got one, okay. I'm running low, so I'll save it for the next.
This is not about Bitcoin Cash per se. I'm just curious, looking forward, like the next couple of years, how do you feel about crowd wisdom and platforms such as like Syndicator, Enigma, going forward to help the cryptocurrency crowd, I guess?
So everybody expects me to know everything about everything. I'm not familiar with Syndicator and Enigma. I'm guessing those are prediction markets that are in the works?
Like data driven and then wisdom of the crowd, so you get a consensus from everyone and kind of find the medium.
So of course I'm a huge fan of wisdom of crowds, especially when those crowds are real people and not paid shills on the internet. Yeah, really exciting. Bitcoin enables all these sorts of things. So prediction markets are one of the things that I've been very interested in a long time. And using Bitcoin and blockchain technology to harness the wisdom of crowds is another fantastic application that's now been enabled thanks to the invention of Bitcoin. So I'm excited about it, but I'm busy working on Bitcoin.com, so I'm not involved directly on a day-to-day basis with any of that. So, okay, thank you. Awesome. Have your stickers in?
I was wondering what your priorities were as far as relationship to complex and difficulties that a lot of top cryptocurrencies deal with, as far as mining equipment. It's usually produced by a centralized equipment. There's only one, that's why one gets more expensive, and the long-term costs that go up due to difficulty, being the transaction costs.
So you're asking about the mining hardware costs going up? Or?
And the centralizing of miners and the transaction costs.
So we'll start one at a time. So the only reason transaction costs have gone up on Bitcoin is because there's been an artificial limit of the supply of block space, and everybody wants to use it, so they have to bid against each other for inclusion in the block space. So that's an artificial thing that's gone up there. In regards to mining equipment manufacturers being centralized, that's not true at all. When I first got involved in Bitcoin, there were only two mining equipment manufacturers in the entire world, AMD and Intel. And then later there were a couple more. There's NVIDIA and AMD, I guess, and maybe one or two others that would use their chips. And today we have Bitmain, we have eBit, we have Bitfury, and there's a couple of other ones in China as well, all competing. So there's actually even more mining equipment manufacturers today than ever before. And there's several other up-and-coming companies that have their own chips in the works as well. So that's becoming more and more decentralized as well.
It's usually the specific chips that get run out the biggest ones.
I'm sorry,
Not
can you speak a little bit louder for me?
It's usually the centralized ones. We say that because the ones that do need them, there's only certain ones like Bitcoin itself and other ones. They need this specific one for that particular cryptocurrency. So they end up sold out because those are only made by a centralized number of them. Even though there's more for the more.
One interesting problem about cryptocurrencies that you can run on GPUs or CPUs
Right.
is that it enables botnets, and then you have to worry about people that have harnessed tens or hundreds of thousands of computers across the internet using their computer botnets to mine cryptocurrencies and potentially doing a 51% attack. But I'd be happy to talk to you about it in more detail a little bit later. So, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You have your sticker already on, and your Bitcoin shirt.
Yes. First of all, thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here. I appreciate going around the world and having these kind of meetups for everybody. My first question for you is in regards to Blockstream, and if you have any concerns as to whether the people up there at Blockstream in San Francisco have essentially hijacked Bitcoin Core, and is this a trend that we're going to see going forward?
I'll repeat it.
Smaller groups of people are taking control over these cryptocurrencies.
So the question was, Blockstream hijacked Bitcoin, and do we have to worry about other small groups of people hijacking cryptocurrencies in the future? Anybody who's read the Bitcoin white paper realizes that Bitcoin has been hijacked by Blockstream. It says right in the title, in the biggest font on the white paper, that Bitcoin is electronic peer-to-peer cash system, right? Not a peer-to-peer settlement system, a peer-to-peer cash system. And last time I checked, peer-to-peer cash doesn't cost $10 every time you want to hand it to somebody else. So without any doubt, the roadmap for Bitcoin has been hijacked by Blockstream. But that being said, I don't think Blockstream are bad people. I don't think they intentionally want to hurt Bitcoin. I genuinely think that in their heart of hearts, they think that they're doing the right thing. But Bitcoin is supposed to be censorship-resistant money. Anybody that even tolerates censorship in regards to Bitcoin isn't a friend or ally of Bitcoin. These people are incredibly misguided. They don't have any background in economics or business, or they would realize that if something costs $10 every time you want to transact in it, people aren't going to transact in it. My educational background is in economics. One of the very most basic rules of economics is that when things cost more, people will use less of it. It's one of the most basic tenets of economics, and I mentioned that at some point, and a bunch of these Blockstream fanboys mocked me for saying something, and that's about as basic as saying 2 + 2 = 4. For anybody that studied economics, when things cost more, people use less of it. It's that simple, and they said, no, that's not true. That doesn't apply to Bitcoin. Well, of course it applies to Bitcoin. So, short story, yeah, I think that they managed to wrestle away control of Bitcoin from people that support free speech and are genuinely good people and interested in Bitcoin being peer-to-peer cash for the world. But luckily now we have Bitcoin Cash, and I think there's a really good chance, a very, very good chance, we'll see a big tipping from Bitcoin SegWit 1x to Bitcoin Cash. And I think all the people that actually use Bitcoin in commerce, and it's the use of Bitcoin in commerce that allows it to be used as a store of value. All the people that use Bitcoin in commerce today are gearing up their tools to use Bitcoin Cash instead. So.
And then, Roger, my second question for you is, one of the concerns I had with this fork that's since been canceled is it was essentially canceled and put off by 6 people. And the fact that something so significant is in the hands of so few, that was a little troublesome for me. What role, if any, do you think the government is ultimately going to play in terms of regulation in the cryptocurrencies? And my final question for you.
So I think two questions per person is probably enough. So, but if the line is over, then feel free to get in line again. So the second question is, I'm sorry, what about
regulations?
The regulations and governments and 6 people were having this agreement. I think, to be honest, everybody had really, really, really lukewarm feelings about the SegWit 2x fork. I wasn't present in New York when it happened. One of my other Bitcoin.com team members were there. I wasn't there, so I can't say for sure, but I like to think I wouldn't have agreed to it at all. and I was only kind of going along with it because we had agreed to it, and your word is your honor. But I wasn't super happy about it, and I think that's how pretty much everybody felt about it. And when the people that were actually doing the work to make it all happen gave up on it, everybody else was kind of like, okay, don't have to worry about that anymore. We already have Bitcoin Cash at this point. I guess it would have been nice if 2x happened, but it's not. Oh well, life goes on. Bitcoin Cash is a heck of a lot more useful in commerce at this point, with fees of about a penny compared to fees of about $10. So thank you for your questions.
All right. So if not Coinbase as an on-ramp or off-ramp for fiat, what other platforms or groups do you recommend?
So Coinbase is a fantastic on-ramp and off-ramp for Bitcoin to fiat, but don't trust them not to spy on you. Don't send your Bitcoins from Coinbase directly to a darknet market site or a gambling site or anything.
But why aren't there others? Like, why is there this one pillar that's the on-ramp and off-ramp that's such a centralized, like, fault point, in my opinion? Why aren't there other Coinbases?
So the question is, why aren't there other on-ramps and off-ramps? I think Google is your friend. There are lots of other on-ramps and off-ramps. There's tons and tons and tons of them. Coinbase.
Are there any that you recommend that you think are like trustworthy in the sense that people feel Coinbase is trustworthy?
Zappo is a fantastic service as well, where you can buy and sell Bitcoins, and there's a whole bunch of other ones as well. The best thing that I can recommend to you, though, is start a business and accept Bitcoin in your business, and then you don't even have to deal with Coinbase or any of these things. You can just get paid.
For other people, I already know.
Okay. Yeah, you use Google. Google is your friend, but be very, very careful. Bitcoin and cash is like cash. You wouldn't hand your cash to some stranger on the other side of the world if you could do that. Don't hand your Bitcoin Cash to some stranger on the internet if they don't seem very, very trustworthy. So you would be stunned how many people have been parted with their Bitcoin Cash that way. So be careful about that. So, thank you for your question.
Hi, Roger.
You have your sticker already?
No, thank you.
There you go. Thank you.
Do you see any value in blockchain platforms that deploy hybrid consensus models with proof of stake and proof of work, such as Decred, that allow built-in governance and can vote for protocol upgrades?
So the person wearing a Decred shirt is asking me about Decred, which is fine. To be honest, I know very little about Decred, so I don't have much of an opinion there at all. But the thought that I do have is let everybody try everything and figure out what works. And if it works well, more power to you. We should be cheering for you, and I hope your experiment's a wonderful, wonderful success. And if it someday winds up beating out Bitcoin Cash, great. We all get to use Decred because it was better than Bitcoin Cash. But to be honest, I know almost nothing about Decred, so I can't really comment on it directly. But support everybody that's doing anything that's not, using force or fraud against their fellow humans. So good luck with Decred.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Here's a sticker.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Got into Bitcoin in large part from watching you, so it's
thank you.
Been kind of a fun ride. I wanted to know, my business partner, we're miners in Bitcoin. We wanted to know when your mining pool will drop support for Bitcoin and only support Bitcoin Cash. I know you've made some comments about that. Just wanted to know how you see things now.
Yeah, so the question is, when will we drop support for Bitcoin Segwit 1x and only support Bitcoin Cash? We were talking about that earlier today with our team. We've sold a bunch of mining contracts to people all over the world, and that hash rate belongs to them at this point. So we intend to allow them to mine what they want with their hash rate, what will allow people with their own mining hardware to mine in the future. If there's a flipping from Bitcoin to Bitcoin Cash, then maybe, and there's a real possibility that the Bitcoin Segwit 1x blockchain will come to a grinding halt until they do an emergency hard fork, which is something they've claimed you can never do, to change the proof of work mechanism. So I don't have a clear answer for you at this point. We're discussing it, is the short answer, but maybe.
Hey Roger, similar mining question. Is there any plans of enticing more hashing power to go to Bcash? The quicker it's much more profitable. The quicker BTC would grind to a halt, similar to how during the beginning of the fork there was an instance where Bcash or Bitcoin Cash was much more profitable for a few difficulty adjustments. So is there any thought being put into that?
Yeah, so the question is, how do we attract more mining power to Bitcoin Cash away from Bitcoin Segwit 1x? The answer is simple for everybody. If you think Bitcoin Cash is going to be more useful in commerce and therefore also as a store of value, sell your Bitcoin Segwit 1x for Bitcoin Cash, and that makes Bitcoin Cash more profitable to mine. So, and I've been doing that with my own Bitcoins as well. So, thank you. Did I hand you a sticker? No. Awesome shirt, by the way, too. You guys, fantastic Dogecoin shirt.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Roger.
Hi.
Thank you for coming out.
My
I got
pleasure.
one.
You got one, okay.
Thank you, sir. So I was at a conference last week with Internal Revenue Service and specifically with the people that deal with foreign bank accounts. And I asked the question outright, what is your position on cryptocurrency? We have no position. Refer back to the 2014 statement. Are you planning on having any statement in the near future? We have no position at the moment. There's a DOJ case with Coinbase this morning. There's also Minutia finally brought up Bitcoin that they're keeping an eye on it. So my question to you is, if and when the government, at least, I work in the tax arena. What do you think? How will that impact cryptocurrency if the Internal Revenue Service gives a position on cryptocurrency?
So I have two answers for you, I suppose. So one is the businessman practical answer, and the businessman practical answer is that businessmen like to know what the rules of the game are, and once they have clear set rules of the game, then they can play the game, and they can go build their businesses and do all sorts of things, and that's fantastic for businesses. That's fantastic for Bitcoin adoption on that front. The philosophical answer is that I've never met any of these people in Washington, D.C. They know I hope they know nothing about me in my life. I certainly know nothing about them in their lives. Why should they have any say over me in my life at all whatsoever? And for me, the attraction of Bitcoin is that it puts me in 100% complete control of my own finances. And if I'm using my Bitcoins in a Bitcoin wallet, not a Bitcoin bank, it's impossible for the IRS to seize my Bitcoins as well. And for me, that's the attraction. And the fact that when you ask the IRS, what is your position on Bitcoin? Or you ask different agencies and they say, we have no position, or refer to something from a long time ago. That's great for us. That means we still have time to push adoption as fast and as quick as we possibly can. And the more people we can get using Bitcoin, the sooner we can get them using it, the harder it'll be for them to come down with some, draconian regulation that makes it illegal or hard for people to use Bitcoin. So we need to spread Bitcoin to all of our friends and family and sisters and brothers as quickly as we possibly can. So if you still have friends and family that haven't used Bitcoin, send them to Bitcoin.com, help them, get them a Bitcoin.com Bitcoin Cash wallet, send them some Bitcoin Cash, send them $1 in Bitcoin Cash, and then tell them to watch it. And they'll see within a week or two or a month that suddenly it's not $1. Maybe it's $2 or $3 or $5 or even $10 at that point. And when they see that happening, even if they're not cryptocurrency nerds or the hardcore libertarians, they say, hey, I just doubled my money in a couple of weeks, they'll be on board pretty quick. And for those of us that are crypto anarchist libertarian types, we just brought another one to the bunch, right?
Yeah,
and I'll tell you an exact story of that in my own life. So in Tokyo, I only have two hobbies. One is Bitcoin, and the other is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so one of my Jiu-Jitsu friends in Tokyo, who's not a libertarian, wasn't a fan of Bitcoin, loves the war on drugs, thinks taxes are great. That was about my reaction, a little bit of a giggle. I guess you haven't studied any economics or moral philosophy. But he thought, oh, maybe I can make some money with Bitcoin. So he said he wanted to buy some Bitcoin, so I pointed him in the right direction, and I don't know, he bought a couple $1,000s worth of Bitcoin. And then the next time I saw him at the dojo, he came up to me in a panic. And he said, Roger, I need your help. And the price of Bitcoin had gone up, 5, maybe 10 times since the last time I saw him. And I said, well, what is it? What can I help you with? And I didn't know what he needed help with. And he said, Roger, I need you to show me how I can hide my Bitcoin so I don't have to pay taxes on them. And that's the wonderful part about cryptocurrencies, is that it takes people that love the war on drugs and love taxes, and it turns them, once they have this powerful tool that gives them the ability to have control of their own money, it turns them into libertarians in practice, even if not in the philosophy in their own mind. They're libertarians in practice, and that's a great, great thing. So while the IRS and all these government agencies are saying, we have no position on this or we have no position on that, that's the time for us to spread Bitcoin to everybody as fast as we possibly can. And that's why this scaling civil war in Bitcoin has just been heartbreaking for me, because we've lost a couple of years worth of adoption.
Yeah.
The Blockstream people are saying, hey, Bitcoin's at an all-time high. I honestly think Bitcoin could have been $50,000 or $100,000 by now had we not run into these scaling debates. I know companies that do like text messaging apps that have more than 100 million monthly users, that were in the process of integrating Bitcoin. And then the scaling issue came and they put all those plans on hold. And it didn't happen. And how many Bitcoin users do you think we have around the world now? Maybe a couple tens of millions, maybe? Imagine if we brought on 150 million all at once, right? What's that going to do for Bitcoin? And so all of those plans got put on hold because of the scaling issue. But I'm glad to say that 2 of them with more than 100 million users have contacted me again, and they're very interested in Bitcoin Cash at this point. So that's exciting.
Awesome.
So, thank you. Did I give you a sticker? Or you got? I'm sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Roger. What's fascinating to me is that you've lived and breathed Bitcoin for years and years, and you've flown around the world talking to people about it, introducing people to it, changing people's lives. But what I want to know your thoughts are is, how do you feel about the cryptocurrency and Bitcoin movement on the grand scheme of things? Is it meeting your expectations in adoption, how people are reacting to it, businesses and everything like that? Aside from the scaling debate, just on the grand scheme of things, how do you feel?
So another favorite thinker of mine is Ray Kurzweil. I don't know how many people here are familiar with Ray Kurzweil. He wrote the Age of Spiritual Machines, and he's in charge of all of Google's AI development. And he has a little saying, or at least I heard it from him first. And he said that things always happen much slower than we expect them to happen in the short term, but they always happen much faster than we expect them to in the long term. And I think that applies to Bitcoin as well.
Can I
Thank
ask
you.
one more question?
Sure.
Two
I think
questions.
that was a short one, if you don't mind. And
oh yes, it'll be real quick. How can we go about reuniting the community if it's feasible?
So the question is, how do we reunite the community? It's certainly not through censorship and trolling with paid propaganda online. That's definitely not the way to do it. But at this point, to be honest, I think if people have different visions and different views, let them go on their different vision and their different path, and they should let us go on our different path. And at the end of the day, we'll figure out which version works. And if people want to switch roads at some point, we should welcome them with open arms. But wish everybody good luck with whatever they're doing, as long as it's not using force or fraud against their fellow man. It's the same answer every time. So, thank you.
The Bitcoin core people are quite well known, the devs. Basically, it's very easy to follow them on like Twitter or social media. And I'm wondering if you could speak about the Bitcoin Cash devs, the different teams, and who to follow on Twitter to get more news about that.
Sure. So there's basically one Bitcoin core team, the majority of which are paid for by this blockstream company. With Bitcoin Cash, you have, I think, 6, 7, 8 different development teams working on clients for it. So there's a bunch. Some of my favorite thinkers on the big block side of the debate, of course, are Gavin Andresen, the guy who actually had the keys to the entire project handed to him by Satoshi Nakamoto himself. Nobody disputes that. And maybe a lot of you are aware, but maybe some of you aren't aware. Gavin shared access to the GitHub repository for that with these Blockstream people, and then they literally kicked him out. He shared access, and then they revoked his access under the guise that his account may have been hacked. And when it turned out his account hadn't been hacked, they didn't bother to give him access back, and that seems really low and dirty to me. So people I like to follow, of course, Gavin Andresen.
He's working on Cash.
I don't know if he is, but I'm sure he's very sympathetic to it. Satoshi Nakamoto or not, I don't care or don't know, but Craig Wright says some really, really interesting things. So he's a really, really interesting person to keep an eye on as well. Andrew Stone of Bitcoin Unlimited is another interesting one. Amaury, and I don't want to say his last name because it might sound like I'm cursing, but his Twitter ID is like Dedelinix, or however you pronounce that one as well, but he's a French guy, so everything's hard to pronounce, but maybe you can pronounce his name. I believe you're from France originally, so.
Yeah, from Belgium.
From Belgium. So, anyhow, maybe we'll narrow it to the last 3 questions, and then we'll do social hour. And anybody, if you don't already have a Bitcoin Cash wallet, make one, or I'll help you make one, and I'll give you $1 in Bitcoin Cash. If you don't have it already, or if you don't have one, I'll help you set it all up. So, last 3 questions. So.
Thank you for coming, Bitcoin Jesus.
Thank you. Here's one more.
Thank you very much for coming. I know it's about Bitcoin, and my real question for you is, what's your take on alts?
I think we're seeing a Darwinian. The question is, what do I think about altcoins? I think we're seeing a Darwinian evolution of cryptocurrencies. So the more things and more experiments that people try, great. I think some alts have some real merit. One of the topics we talked about earlier, the fungibility of Bitcoin is really, really weak. When I first got involved in Bitcoin, everybody thought it was totally anonymous, right? Do whatever you want with it. Now we know you have to be really, really, really careful with what you're up to if you want to use Bitcoin anonymously. And some of these altcoins have a really strong privacy. Monero, Zcash, Zcoin. I would be careful of the privacy level in Dash. I'm a little bit skeptical on that front, but you know, try if you like something, give it a try, right? So more power to the alts.
Any other markets that you think that the blockchain is going to penetrate in the future? Big markets that
I'm most interested in the application of money. So I'm interested in seeing cryptocurrencies replace government-issued money around the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. So quick question. Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So my question is about the long-term future. So I've deployed 20% into crypto. Actually, it was 2%. Now it's 20%. I'm going to let it ride. My background is in operating systems and distributed systems from 25 years ago. So my view is, as an early investor in companies like Cisco that have done well with the network, the power of the network and Metcalfe's law, it seems like the future is biased toward distributed systems like Bitcoin. If you were to get advice to people in this audience about investing for the future, would you say it's prudent to assume that censorship and control by, for example, the federal government, is that something you would think would tend to die away courtesy of the power of the censorship of the network? In other words, the network considers censorship as a fault and routes around it. And so if you assume that's true for the future, if I run my own full Bitcoin core node right now and other people are joining me and there's 10,000 nodes, there's no way the government can stop that. So what I'm reading in the press about, the big problem with crypto is censorship and government regulation. That's bullshit. If I'm running my own node and there's 10,000 other people like me running my own node, now whether it's Bitcoin Core or Bitcoin Cash, that system is a distributed piece of a ledger that everyone is running around the world. No one can stop that. So just like investing in Cisco in 93, 94, there's no fucking way anyone's going to put a lid on it. Is that a correct assumption? Should I just let it ride and go and keep the 20% in crypto? Or should I be peeling off profits and like buying gold and buying other stuff and distribute it? What do you think? Like, what is the long-term vision for the future?
Yeah, so by engineering design and by intentional design, Bitcoin and distributed systems and all these cryptocurrencies by design are above the law. That's an intentional design in the system. So when a bunch of politicians that we've never met get together and write down words on a piece of paper and call it a law, that doesn't alter the way in which Bitcoin works in any way whatsoever. One part that I'd like to correct you though, is it's not the number of people that are running nodes that make your transaction censorship resistant. Like none of these nodes record your transaction in a block. It's the miners that record the transactions in a block. So we need to make sure that there's lots of miners all over the world because those are the people that have the ability to record transactions in blocks. So. And so all the miners are running a node in order to do it. So.
Is it useful for me to run my own node on a Mac Pro? Is it useful for the network to do that? Or is that like passe?
Mildly. It's certainly fun. Like if you're a computer nerd, it's fun to run your own node. I'm sorry.
It's not required for the growth of the network.
No, we need to make sure we have enough nodes around the world that government can't shut them all down. But if there's 10,000 nodes versus 10,001, I don't think it makes a difference. Thank you so much. So, last question of the night.
Did you lose your bet to Charlie Lee?
So I emailed with him tonight. I think the way the actual terms of the bet were written is that there have to be at least 100 blocks on the fork in order for the bet to be considered valid. It sounds like that's not going to happen. So I told them that I'm going to use those 1,000 Bitcoins to buy more Bitcoin Cash. So that's where we're at on that. So here's the sticker. So thank you very much. So,
all right.
Okay. Social hour. Everybody can clap for everybody.
Thank you, Roger.